I'm a consultant on Tableau and Alteryx, working for the Information Lab, and I've been working with the European Investment Fund, in French also the Fonds Européen d'Investissement, which is often known as FEI. And I've been helping them to implement their business analytics project over the last several years. And in this particular session, I will share with you how visual analytics is helping the IF deliver insights and also transparency in public funding, which is one of the main projects. A couple of words on the Information Lab itself. We are a fairly small team of passionate people about business analytics. We really like what we're doing. And we specialize really in just two different software products. One is called Alteryx, which is all about data, let's say, preparation. It's really about numbers and preparation and enrichment. And the Tableau software, which is one of the leaders in visual analytics software solutions. These two tools work extremely well together. And so we've been partners with Tableau and Alteryx since like 2013. So it's been quite a few years already since we've been working with these solutions. We're growing, we're multilingual, and we're also local. That means that we have offices across Europe and also one in Luxembourg, and that's where I am myself based in. Maybe it's important to understand is that business analytics sometimes, especially in the past, there was a connotation with, these are kind of IT geeks who just do bits and bytes and numbers. And in fact, it's not quite like that anymore. The team is extremely diverse. We have people with backgrounds from marketing, from finance, from engineering, also marketing and graphic designs. And they've all have developed some type of passion in regards to data analytics. So that makes us a very diverse team, and we also plug people in depending on how the needs are, which is actually quite nice. So before moving into the concrete of this project, data analytics has evolved a lot over the last, let's say, several decades. In the past, it was more of a complex environment. It was only accessible to selected few within organizations. They had very special software. They had special access to databases, and they had special tools. Now, all that has changed a lot over the last decades. As you all know, also as private people, you're getting more and more apps. You're using mobile phones, and you get data and insights about various apps and applications you're using. So it's not anymore for the specialists. It's really analytics for everyone. And as platforms have evolved to cloud-based and mobile, it's accessible everywhere and anytime. An important point when looking at visual analytics projects is why are you doing it? It's not enough anymore about just developing a dashboard with some nice graphics, but it allows you to really analyze or get behind certain questions you may have. And these questions, you try to get behind those questions and you try to provide insight into those questions. And most importantly, the third step is that whatever insight you produce from whatever project you're working on they need to drive some type of action or a change in behavior. So these are three components which I believe are very important in any data analytics or visual analytics type project. Always making sure that it leads to some action. And the last point is that as software tools are becoming more and more developed, computers are working much better nowadays, not like it was like 20 years ago. Tools now are really easy to use, they're fast, powerful, and most of all, they're really fun to use. Once you start playing with data, you start to discover more insights into your data, and that will make you curious about, well, what is behind that data. So it prompts you to ask more questions behind the questions, and it's a really fun process, because often when you start a project, you don't necessarily know the questions yet. You only get there throughout time. So I thought that's important to bring up. It's kind of a cycle of analyzing and going back and forth in order to develop a project. Now, European Investment Fund. I believe for most of you it should not be new what DIF is, but maybe a couple of words regarding DIF. They essentially support the European, or they focus on the small and medium enterprise companies in providing them access to finance. And they do that through local partners. These local partners, they may be financial intermediaries, they may be banks, and the tools they use in order to provide that financing is a mixture of different financial tools, such as guarantees, microfinance, private equity, and venture capital. So this, and obviously the IF work closely together with the European Commission and is part of the European Investment Bank. Now, at the core, they have mobilized billions of euros into growing the SMEs in Europe, and that has been done through a network of, as this slide shows, over 1,300 partners. And at the end of all this, they have helped 1.8, close to 2 million SMEs. So that is at the core of what the IF does, at least from my end point of view. And the challenge of this project was, well, so we have this public money, or part of it is public, and it's being used to help SMEs. And part of the project was, well, how can we provide transparency to where this money is going? How do we show the public where the money is going and what are the impact and the results from these EU growth initiatives in benefiting local economies? So that is at the heart of this project. Now, when you analyze a project like this, getting back to my earlier slide, it's really about asking the right questions. And I see these as like a two-step approach. So the first question is, well, let's give the insight into questions which we already know, like, for example, which countries and markets are we impacting? How many jobs have we created? Where have we created those jobs? And how is the public money being used to support certain areas of the economy, such as industry sectors and so on? So these are kind of the known questions. So whatever one does, also in this project, these known questions should already need to be addressed in the visual dashboard. And then, of course, the next question, which is now the more complicated layer, is, well, are we reaching the small enterprises around the corner? Are we investing in the right segments? So there's a lot of other questions which are, let's say, the new challenges to all of us, which are also part of these visual analytics projects. What change is required at the end? What action is the result from this gonna produce? Are we going to change the way we're going to approach? How to reach the SMEs? Are we under investing in a certain industry sector? Do we need to put more focus in certain areas geographically or within the economy? So those are definitely, a lot of those questions are being answered using this same type of data, but in different departments within the IF and maybe also in other businesses. Now let's move on to this specific project. This is more the technical aspect. So we're looking at fairly large data sets, because whatever we produce in visual analytics, it all starts with the data. So what we get from the IF, let's say, is we get a data set which contains the operations and all the SMEs which have received the financial funding. So here are a couple of numbers. There's like 4 million operations, there's nearly 2 million SMEs, and there's additional information. For example, we're getting like 10,000 SMEs on a monthly basis, which need to be updated into this data set. Another part is that we need to enrich the data with additional information. So we need to take all these addresses and geocode them on street level, which is a mammoth type activity to do with such an amount of data. On the third point, we have the actual infrastructure on how to share this information. So first of all, it needs to be available for the public. That means it needs to be on a website somehow. There needs to be access online without too much complex logins. It needs to be secure, which is an extremely important component in this. There's data privacy involved, there's anonymization involved, and there's the usual penetration and then firewalls and so on. And also, it needs to be adaptable. That means that, and I'll talk about that a bit later, adaptable means that whatever data we produce and enrich here, we will use later on, because it's a lot of valuable data. We can use that later on for further insight and analysis. There's another point which is called NUTS codes. And that was new to us when we started this project. NUTS codes is, and actually let me switch to the next slide, is a standardized way of grouping areas within the European Union. And it's actually the EU which provides the data set of these NUTS codes. And it's also regulated, and it's a very clear hierarchy which consists of 3 different levels, which defines how all the countries and all the regions are broken down to in the EU. Now, why is this important? Well, each country has its own postcode systems, maybe regional, maybe communal. Some have, like in Luxembourg, it's just L dash with some numbers. In the UK, it's, pair of numbers with dashes and so on. And each country has its own way of doing this. But essentially, EU institutions, they need to find a standardized way on reporting numbers. And it needs to be like one version of the truth. And that's why this NUTS is extremely important. So one big part of the project is, well, we have all these SMEs with all these addresses. We need to give them the corresponding NUTS so that at the end of the journey, we're able to produce the correct report which everybody's looking for. So I can actually drill down into certain regions within a country, and everybody is speaking the same language, and we're all comparing the same numbers on how much has been invested in the Darmstadt region, for example, and that reporting is consistent across all the agencies within the EU. Now, the last point I just added is the NUTS definitions, they actually are updated on a regular basis. This is due to geopolitical changes, also because countries evolve, and so sometimes there are new NUTS areas per country, but also sometimes certain NUTS areas are divided into 2. So it's not only that there's a new area, but sometimes there's a division of the NUTS area. So it's a bit technical, but I thought it was important to bring this up because it's one of the key items to make sure that whatever data we produce is extremely valuable for the organization down the road. Now, what's the process behind creating visualization like this? Now, it all starts with data preparation. And as part of that data preparation, we also enrich the data. So the preparation, for example, is we need to clean the data. That means we get data from all these financial institutions, the banks, the intermediaries, of all the SMEs, and sometimes the address is typed in, are not 100%, typed in the way they should. Sometimes it includes, for example, here mentioned the third office on the second floor, and sometimes it includes the postcode inside the address, sometimes outside, and so on. So So that is one of the first steps we do. We need to clean that area of data, and that falls under data preparation. And the data enrichment is, well, once we have that, we can now geocode it. So we use a lot of different tools in how to actually create the geocodes of these addresses. So there's a lot of tools like that, like Bing and here, and also Alteryx has built-in tools which does a lot of geospatial analytics. So that's just kind of the second part which we add to the data. The other part, what we add to the data is, for example, we can also connect to other third-party databases. For example, company registries, KYC registries, which have details of managers and fiscal information about the companies. So we enrich a lot of this data so that at the end, this data is much more valuable for the organization further down the road for different departments and different applications. Now, for this specific project, we stop here after the geocoding, and we use whatever data we have produced, and we share this in a visualization, which is essentially a map which is online. And I'll shift over to this map now. So I'm just going to go online. This is live. So this is the website. It's eif4smes.com. So anybody can go there anytime. So this is actually public data. And this is the result. So it shows all the different SMEs located by area, by country. But in addition, we provide a lot of further information which helps the user answer his specific questions, because that is really what all this is about. It's about providing them a tool to gain further insight on where this public funding has been used. So for example, on the left-hand side, we have different mandates, which are all officially mentioned by the European Commission on all types of websites. And I believe also in the publications office. This should not be any new topic, I assume. There's also the source of funding. That means where has the money come from? So I may have a very specific interest in regards to, where did the money go from ESIF within a certain area of Romania, for example. And I may also want to know, show me all the private equity type companies or companies which have received private equity funding, for example. So all these filters here are totally interactive, and they allow you to drill down into what the user may be looking for. On the bottom, we have a bunch of KPIs. So this is the total amount financed within whatever you see right now. It's like 1.5 million SMEs for this specific limited data set, number of operations, and also, most importantly, what has been the outcome from all this. It's not enough about just investing in SMEs or providing them financial access, but it's about, what has that really at the end generated for the economy? Most of it is all about job creation. So jobs is extremely important at this point. So there's further areas here. I can also see the rest of the world. So right now it's filtered by the EU27 and also the rest of the world. Let me see. Probably I'm going to have to reload this. Give me a second. Okay, so now you see a world map on where the investments have gone, and each country you can see more information as you drill down. So Liechtenstein and so on and so on. And if we stick to the EU27 for now. Now, as mentioned, the EU27, we have incorporated the NUTS codes. That is not the case for the rest of the world. So in terms of drill down capability, and that was also part of the project, is to all the countries which are within the EU, they have official nuts codes, and that is exactly what has been done. Of course, countries outside do not have the nuts codes, and as a result, you cannot necessarily drill down and report in the same way, which is fine. So, so let's look at the example of France. So if I click on France, I should be able to drill down now into the different nuts areas of France. I hope not everybody's accessing the map right now. Or maybe my connection is a bit weak here. I'll just refresh this. Okay, so here's France. Okay, there you go. So these are the official, let's say, level 1 nuts areas of region of France. And for each one, and also the KPIs on the bottom, this is now all for France. So for France, there's been 350,000 SMEs have received financial support. And on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, you see further statistics on where this, which industry sectors has received certain financing, and also here you have further statistics. For example, how many new SMEs per year have received financing. And then if I further drill down into the neighboring area of Luxembourg, which is here, Lorraine. I'm not sure if the internet is a bit weak here, I'm not sure. Hold on. Apologies for this, let me just drill down again. Okay, so here's France, Alsace, Champagne, Ardennes, Lorraine. Then here you have Lorraine. And then the further you drill down, the more granular it becomes. And here's the Moselle area. Voilà. So for the Moselle, which is the neighboring area, you have all the statistics on each side. And then if you continue on manufacturing, you'll then see further information about how much has been invested in the manufacturing area. Yeah, that's about it for the map, for this specific project. So feel free to access the web site as you wish. Play around with the numbers. Hopefully your internet connection is a bit better, and if required, we can share this the URL at later on. I assume after the project, after the presentation. Okay, so let's move on to the last step of this is the actual data. Now, you just saw one part of the project. Now, and as mentioned, we spoke about geocoding. So part of the enrichment which we have done to this data is we have encoded each SME within this data set. However, we did not show it on this map. As you saw, I did not drill down further. Now, technically we can do that. And actually internal to EIF, we actually drill down to geocode level in order to provide a further analysis of the data. However, for data privacy reasons, that is, for example, not shared on the public website. However, the actual data set itself actually has it. Another part is nuts. Now, getting back to the nuts area, the nuts complexity of nuts. The nuts regions, they change every couple of years. My understanding is it's every 2 years. So there's 13, 16, and since this year it's 2021. Now, we need clients or like yourselves. You need a system which you can then automatically or with not too much effort, adapt your data set to the new nuts areas. So what we are able to do here is that we have that one data set, but we include the nuts codes of 2013, and we also included 2016, and now we've included the area codes of 2021. And why are we doing this? Is because the reporting which the EIF requires on an official basis keeps changing according to how the nuts regions are also rolled out. So whatever data set we produce needs to be enriched with that type of data in order to meet again the needs of the actual business. So it's very important to understand what the business needs are, and that data quality plays a big role, because at the end of the day, you want a data set which is high quality and standardized and enriched with a lot of information. Speak of standardization, when we get data from financial institutions, there's different ways on how you report industry sectors. Some people use NASA codes, which is the let's say more standard way of using it. But if you're looking at private equity, it is often used using EFCA sectors. So if anybody wants to provide a report, well, where did the financing go in what country and which industry sector? It needs to be streamlined and consolidated into one standard way of reporting. So that is another activity which we do with this data. And last but not least, as already mentioned earlier, we connect to third-party companies, databases, which we then also use to further enrich the data set for later use. And for later use is that same data set later on moves over to be used in a lot of different areas within the organization. So the first one is external visualization. So that is, let's say, this project which I just presented just now, but there's a lot of other projects which use further internal analytics, which may use further geocoding details, certain reports which goes to fund managers or even to the EIB. They may need standardized industry sectors and also standardized NUTS codes, and of course compliance and risk are other benefits of having a standardized data set. So in a nutshell, how has the EIF benefited from this project, or in overall of this a lot of this back-end work going into the data preparation is, once the data is clean, then you can start playing with the data and you discover new insights, and using a business intelligence type platform as the EIF has implemented, it allows them to share these insights much easier. Because a lot of these reports are now automated, a lot of these answers are provided much quicker. So the business is able to react much faster and get answers quickly to certain questions. And there's also a cost-saving part of it, because a lot of reports which were previously manual, because data sets are now becoming more prepared and ready to be consumed, a lot of reports are connected to real-time data coming from, let's say, the data warehouses, and they end up producing the reports using the latest data. And all this is really important because, first of all, the data there's one version of the truth. That means there's no manipulation of data. It's like, something's missing here, or we add data because you need different data sets. So there's a huge cost-saving component in automating these reports, which is a result from having clean data sets. And because of all that, because people can now focus more on their work, they're able to work on bigger issues, like focus on strategic problems. They get the answers much quicker. They get questions. They can answer them much faster, and like that, they can all focus better on their day-to-day job to improve the business. Yes, so that concludes the introduction to this project, and I believe I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Steve, for this demo and this presentation of the project. One of the questions that I have while you were presenting the map, how can we see the impact over time of this public spending on the creation of new SMEs and new jobs?
Yes, I believe that's
a component.
Yes, exactly. So if you go to these statistics here, they deliver certain information which we have deemed, let's say, important at this stage of the project. But you're absolutely right. We internally we have, or the EIF has, additional dashboards which analyze further data, how this has impacted job creation in certain areas. So for sure, that is information which can be included in this. You're absolutely right. It's a very good question, and I believe the statistics part of this dashboard can be enhanced with further information. Now, that said, there is a certain amount of interaction you have here. So let me just refresh the map here. I'm just going to reload it. Okay. Because I can click on a certain country. So if I click on France, for example, so now I'm just going to see France, and I can further drill down on manufacturing. Okay, so now I'm filtering, okay, show me the jobs and the SMEs and the financing within France, and now show me all these numbers just related to manufacturing. And here on the right-hand side, I have the evolution of the jobs creation over time. Of course, the chart is kept very simple due to space. But here you see, for example, in 2006, there were 2,400 new SMEs which had benefited from financial support. So this is one way on looking at this. You can further drill down. So now I want to see this just for micro businesses. So I further click on further information, and I should then see more details, just drill down into that. But for sure, there's a lot of different statistics which can be produced, and maybe having a separate dashboard which just shows the statistics would probably be quite helpful. And actually, good point. I'll suggest that to the EIF. And of course, SMEs, they can also use this tool if they want to show what type of support they have received as well, because it's totally public.
Is this using open source, and how could we apply the same process for different field, for different data sets or policy field?
Yes, no, this is not open source. The data is internal to the European Investment Fund, and this is, let's say, a subset of that data which has been especially anonymized for this project. So it's not open source. However, I believe that if there is a certain need for other institutions to tap into that data, then I believe the best thing would be to contact the EIF to see if there's a way to work together. But that's not part of my role. But no, to answer the question directly, the data is not open source, and the software tool used is not open source either. This platform is running on Tableau software, and it's specifically developed for these type of applications. So it includes a very secure, access and server setup and so on.
Right. Thank you. Mm-hmm. You mentioned during your talk the importance of standardization and of data quality. and the data cleaning to start any visualizing and understanding of the data. Roughly, during the process, what is the time spent in this data cleaning and data enrichment in the overall implementation or design of the project? How much time is devoted to this part before you can start working on the external visualization?
Yes. I mean, that's a very good question. Now, if I show this slide again, because this slide includes more details of the actual content of the project. But if you look at the first step is the geocoding, because the geocoding is, let's say, the foundation for the nuts generation. So that's kind of the sequence of events. So if we're looking at just the cleaning of addresses, it's a fairly complex effort of the project, because you need to understand how the data comes in from all the different sources. So a big phase of that project is to first analyze, well, what do we get? There's different sources of the data because it's coming from a lot of different financial institutions, and everybody reports addresses in a slight different way. So that is the first step. First you analyze, what is the situation, and then the next step is, okay, well, now we've got these different ways on how the data has come to us. Now let's look at what is the best way on how to clean that data. And then once you have that data cleaned, then you have a good foundation to move to the next step, which in this case is the geocoding, for example. Now, in every project, we always start off with, well, let's first analyze what we got. That can go quite quickly. So if you want some numbers, that may just take a couple of days to analyze the data and see what we get. And then, of course, we need to get to the drawing board and see, well, okay, how do we prepare that data now so that we can get into a clean geocoding process. And that really depends on the first step. How dirty is the data, how much cleaning is required, and so on. And then, of course, if you have the ability to connect to third-party databases, that opens up additional information. So if you find a link between the two, then you can benefit from other databases which any organization internally already may have. So, for example, if you may have, let's say, a fiscal number of a company, and you have a different database with a fiscal number, well, let's try and match them and see what we get. And with that analysis, you can then again identify or determine, well, okay, we've got a match of 50%. That's really not bad. Let's really use that as part of the enrichment process. So there's a lot of different areas to analyze. And so once the analysis is done, there's tools such as Alteryx. That's why we use that tool, which is extremely sophisticated, and it can then really help us to automate these cleaning workflows. And that's really important because once these workflows are developed, and just go back a couple of slides. This workflow here, as you may remember, we have every month we have 10,000 additional SMEs. Now, and the idea is to update this map on a monthly basis. So we cannot go in and reanalyze everything in every month. So the workflows have been developed in order to get a fairly good hit ratio in terms of data quality with the data which comes in. And what we now do, once the project has been developed, we load the new data, let's say the new 10,000 SMEs, and then we run them through the workflow. So Alteryx will do that automatically, and then will automatically produce geocoding and do a very large number of quality checks, and at the end it will produce the data set. So there's a lot of different stages, but once it's done properly, then once these workflows are automated, then you benefit from the previous job done.
So there's a significant effort done in order to be able to visualize everything in a standard and harmonized way. Okay, if there are no further questions, I see there are no questions in the chat box. I would like to thank you once again on behalf of the Publications Office, Steve, for presenting this project. I would also like to inform our participants that today is the deadline for submission of proposals for the first EU Open Data Days that will be held in November.